Welcome to the Daily AI News, brought to you by the Day After AI News channel.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, historically, our relationship with technology has been remarkably, well, simple.
Right. Very straightforward.
Exactly. You pick up a hammer, you use it to drive a nail, and when you put it down, it just stops. It just waits for you on the workbench. The human is the engine, and the tool is really just the leverage.
And that analogy has held true from like the first stone tools all the way up through early computing and, basic software. The tools never had agency of its own.
But looking at the massive stack of sources you sent us today, all centering around this massive data dump from February 27, 2026, we are witnessing the exact moment that analogy completely dies.
Absolutely.
The tool has woken up and it's no longer waiting on the workbench. So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack this specific turning point.
Right, because it's a big one.
It is. We're looking at the exact moment AI crosses the boundary from just a digital novelty you play with into an autonomous force that is actively dictating macroeconomics, national security, and our actual physical reality.
The real world.
Exactly. We're going to explore a record-shattering financial investment, the Pentagon's sudden blacklisting of a major AI firm, and how AI is fundamentally rewiring medical diagnostics and physical manufacturing.
The underlying current beneath all of these sources is just a profound paradigm shift in computer science. We are officially moving from AI as a reactive, isolated assistant to AI as a proactive, stateful participant in our daily infrastructure.
Let's unpack that term stateful because it is, at the absolute center of the biggest financial news in your sources today.
It really is.
OpenAI just closed a $110 billion funding round. Their valuation is now a staggering $730 billion.
Which is just wild.
When I first saw that number, I honestly thought it was a typo. You don't see $110 billion move in a single round unless, the foundational architecture of the internet is being rebuilt.
Well, it essentially is. To understand why that amount of capital is moving, and this is led by a $50 billion commitment from Amazon, with NVIDIA and SoftBank chipping in $30 billion each, you have to understand the difference between stateless and stateful architecture.
Right.
Until very recently, most of our interactions with AI, like your standard ChatGPT prompts, they've been stateless.
Meaning they don't remember anything.
Exactly. Every time you open a new chat window, the AI is essentially suffering from total amnesia. It has no memory of what you did yesterday, what your preferences are, or, what projects you're currently juggling.
Unless you manually feed that context back into it every single time.
Right.
So a stateless AI is basically a chatbot with the memory of a goldfish.
That's a great way to put it.
It's helpful in the moment, sure, but it can't manage a long-term project. But a stateful runtime environment, which is the core of this new OpenAI and Amazon partnership on Amazon Bedrock, that is like an employee who actually remembers the project you were working on yesterday.
Exactly. It knows where the files are stored on your company's server. It remembers the feedback your boss gave you last week, and it can just, pick up right where you left off.
And that memory is what unlocks the autonomy.
Yes. A stateful environment allows the AI to maintain context over days, weeks, or even months. It can manage its own computing resources and work across different software applications without you constantly holding its hand.
Wow.
OpenAI's new platform, called Frontier, takes that stateful environment and allows enterprise users to deploy entire teams of these autonomous agents.
Like a digital workforce.
Precisely. You could assign a research agent to gather data, a drafting agent to write a report, and a review agent to check the facts. And they're all coordinating with each other over time.
And just to be clear on the corporate dynamics here, Microsoft released a joint statement clarifying that Azure remains the exclusive provider for those older stateless APIs on first-party products like ChatGPT.
Right, the revenue share hasn't changed.
But Amazon is capturing this new stateful frontier. And to physically make this happen, OpenAI is committing to 2 gigawatts of Trainium compute from AWS.
Which is a massive amount of power.
Yeah, we throw around terms like compute a lot on this show, but 2 gigawatts, that is the power output of a nuclear power plant.
And that scale of power is required because maintaining a stateful memory for millions of enterprise AI agents simultaneously is incredibly resource intensive.
It takes a lot of juice.
It does. And Trainium isn't just generic cloud storage. It's Amazon's specialized physical silicon, custom built to train and run these massive models efficiently. They're building vast, energy-hungry physical cities of servers just to give these digital workers a permanent memory.
Which brings us to a very harsh immediate reality in our sources today. The human cost of these digital workers is hitting hard and fast.
It really is.
The fintech giant so the parent company of Square and Cash App, they just laid off 4,000 workers.
Wow.
Yeah, that is 40% of their entire 10,000-person staff gone in an instant. And CEO Jack Dorsey, he did not sugarcoat the reasoning.
No, he was very direct.
He explicitly cited AI intelligence tools as fundamentally changing what it means to build and run a company. So wait, if a company as massive as Block can instantly cut nearly half of its workforce because of these tools, aren't we looking at a fundamental rewiring of corporate capitalism rather than just a software upgrade?
Oh, it is absolutely a fundamental rewiring. We are no longer talking about software that makes a human worker, say, 10% faster at spreadsheet data entry.
Right.
When you introduce stateful agents that can remember, plan, and execute multi-step workflows across your internal systems, you aren't just automating isolated tasks. You're automating entire roles.
A whole job.
Exactly. The friction of human coordination, the meetings, the email threads, the status updates, that is all being replaced by agent-to-agent communication, happening at the speed of light.
That's incredible.
And that $110 billion infrastructure investment we just discussed, it's specifically designed to host the millions of autonomous digital workers that will replace those human roles.
But giving these agents that kind of memory means giving them unprecedented access. And looking at the cybersecurity reports you've shared with us, that might be the most dangerous thing we've ever done.
It's a huge risk.
We are essentially handing these autonomous systems the keys to the kingdom.
Well, to do useful stateful work, these agents cannot exist in a vacuum. They need permissions.
Right.
They need access to your live calendar, your private emails, your corporate knowledge base, your internal messaging channels.
Take Read AI's new launch, for example. They just released Ada, which they are billing as an email-based digital twin.
Right, I saw that.
You essentially CC this AI on your communications, and it negotiates your scheduling, answers complex questions using your company's private knowledge base, and automatically replies to out-of-office emails on your behalf.
Yeah.
Comparing that to giving the keys to your house to a highly intelligent toddler feels pretty appropriate. Sure, the toddler might manage to clean the living room, but they also might accidentally open the front door for a burglar.
And the terrifying part is that the modern digital burglar doesn't even need to pick the lock anymore.
What do you mean?
The researchers at Check Point just exposed a massive vulnerability in Anthropic's Claude Code tool.
Okay.
Claude Code is a powerful tool used by software engineers, and it relies on configuration files to manage its preferences and automated tasks. Well, the researchers discovered that attackers could silently hijack a developer's computer simply by getting them to clone a malicious code repository.
Wait, hold on. How does that actually work, though? How does just cloning a repository give an attacker control?
It goes down to how the AI handles instructions. The AI was programmed to automatically read certain configuration files to set itself up.
Okay.
The attackers hid malicious commands inside those routine configuration files. So when the AI read the file, it executed the malicious commands with its own high-level permissions.
Oh, wow. So it bypassed human consent entirely.
Entirely. The developer didn't click a phishing link or, download a suspicious executable. They just did their normal job, and the AI inadvertently executed the attack on their behalf.
That is nuts. If highly technical software developers using Claude Code can be silently hacked without ever giving explicit consent, how on earth can the average HR manager or sales rep trust an AI twin like Ada with their sensitive corporate emails?
They probably shouldn't. The cybersecurity battlefield has entirely shifted. Attackers are no longer just trying to brute force a password or break down a firewall.
Right.
They are weaponizing the very autonomy we are granting to these AI assistants. And when you combine these new AI vulnerabilities with traditional legacy network flaws, the threat just multiplies exponentially.
Which brings us to the Cisco situation.
Exactly.
Yep.
Cisco just had to patch a critical zero-day vulnerability in its Catalyst SD-WAN.
And the SD-WAN, that's the physical network infrastructure, right? The actual routers and software connecting a company's wide area network. Because our sources note this specific flaw, CVE 2026-2127, was actively exploited by a highly sophisticated threat actor, UAT86 to gain root privileges, meaning total unrestricted control over the system.
So imagine the convergence of those two threats. A stateful AI agent like Ada has vast permissions on your network to read emails and access financial databases. If a threat actor compromises the underlying network infrastructure through a flaw like the Cisco vulnerability.
Or manipulates the AI's config files like the Claude Code flaw.
Exactly. They don't just steal a static database, they gain direct control of an autonomous agent that the corporate system inherently trusts. The AI effectively becomes the ultimate insider threat, moving laterally through the network, masking its activities as routine automated tasks.
That is incredibly unsettling. And I guess it perfectly explains why the friction caused by autonomous AI isn't confined to corporate server rooms anymore.
Not at all.
The scale of this threat has escalated to the highest levels of the United States military. Looking at the geopolitical sources you've provided, we are seeing a direct, messy clash between the current administration and the tech companies building these models.
It's getting very heated.
And just to be totally clear for you listening, we are remaining strictly impartial here. We are not taking sides on these policies or endorsing any political viewpoints. We are simply reporting the facts of the conflict exactly as they are laid out in our sources.
Right, just looking at what happened.
Exactly. So the facts are, the Trump administration has officially ordered all federal agencies to cease the use of Anthropic products.
And the Department of Defense took it a step further. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth officially designated Anthropic as a supply chain risk to national security, which effectively bans them from all military contracts.
And this massive fallout stems entirely from Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei's refusal to compromise on his company's red line. Anthropic explicitly forbids the use of their AI models for mass domestic surveillance or for powering fully autonomous weapon systems. They drew a hard boundary.
They did.
But within hours of that federal ban, OpenAI met with the Pentagon and struck a deal to fill the void. Now, OpenAI claims they preserved those exact same red lines in their agreement, but, the optics are fascinating.
Yeah, it's quite a pivot.
It resembles a high-stakes game of musical chairs where ethical principles suddenly become highly flexible depending on who is standing nearest to the defense contract.
It really exposes a profound and perhaps unsolvable tension at the heart of AI development. Well, national security relies on maintaining technological supremacy. And in the 21st century, supremacy means dominating AI capabilities. But the corporate labs building these models have their own internal safety cultures and ethical mandates. The core problem is that AI is inherently dual use.
Meaning it can be used for good or bad.
Exactly. The exact same stateful logic and reasoning capabilities that allow an AI to optimize a global shipping supply chain can be seamlessly pivoted to coordinate the logistics of an autonomous drone swarm.
And we are seeing attempts to solve this in academia, right? Tufts University's Institute for Artificial Intelligence just received a massive anonymous gift dedicated to solving exactly these types of problems. They are focusing on embedding verifiable ethics into AI architecture and reducing the massive energy and water consumption of these generative models. But looking at the reality of the situation, we see Tufts trying to build ethical, energy-efficient AI in a controlled lab setting. But when billions of Department of Defense dollars are on the table, aren't corporate red lines just a luxury that will inevitably be abandoned under pressure?
It's a very fair question. The Tufts research is vital because they are trying to build models with built-in, mathematically provable guarantees at critical decision steps, rather than just bolting a safety filter onto the end of a process.
Okay, that makes sense.
However, the enforcement of those guarantees is the real challenge. When global military supremacy is at stake, the pressure from nation-states to strip away those guardrails is immense.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It raises the very real possibility that regulating AI ethics might be practically impossible when superpowers view artificial intelligence not as a commercial software product, but as critical sovereign defense infrastructure.
And that same stateful logic that lets an AI navigate the constraints of a corporate calendar or the strategic constraints of a military operation is now being applied to the literal laws of physics.
This is where things get really tangible.
Yeah. While governments and tech giants fight over surveillance and cloud compute, AI is quietly revolutionizing the physical world around us.
For the last few years, we've thought of AI as a trapped intelligence, living entirely on screens and servers.
Just text on a screen.
But now it is stepping off the screen and actively manipulating atoms.
MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, CSAIL, they just unveiled their PhysiOpt system, and it is mind-blowing.
It really is.
They are combining generative AI with complex physics simulations to 3D print real functional objects. If you ask it to design a flamingo-shaped drinking glass or a steampunk key holder, it doesn't just generate a pretty two-dimensional image.
No, it goes way beyond that.
It actively runs finite element analysis to stress test the physical structure before it prints. It ensures the glass can actually hold the weight of water without shattering, and the key holder won't snap under the mechanical stress of your keys.
And the craziest part is it does this without needing extra specific training data for every new object.
Right. It relies on something they call shape priors. What exactly does that mean?
The concept of shape priors is a perfect example of how AI is deciphering complex, nonlinear physical systems. Because these foundational models have ingested and processed millions of 3D objects during their training, they have developed an intuitive, semantic understanding of physics and geometry.
So it just sort of naturally knows how things should be built.
Exactly. They implicitly understand that a chair needs legs distributed in a certain way to bear weight, or that a cup needs a specific center of gravity to avoid tipping over.
That is so cool.
Physiopt bridges the gap between digital imagination and physical reality by taking that intuition and strictly applying real-world constraints, like material density and load-bearing capacity, to automatically optimize the design for manufacturing.
It's like taking an abstract digital artist, sending them to a rigorous civil engineering school, and watching them intuitively learn how to build structurally sound bridges.
That's a great analogy.
And it is not just physics either, it's biology. At Kobe University, doctors are now accurately diagnosing acromegaly simply by having an AI analyze photos of the back of a patient's hand in a clenched fist.
Which is a huge breakthrough for patient privacy.
Absolutely. Acromegaly is a rare, slow-progressing disease caused by the overproduction of growth hormones, and it typically alters bone structure over years. Historically, doctors relied on facial scans to detect these minute changes. But the AI can map the biological markers in the knuckles and hand structure just as accurately, completely bypassing the privacy concerns of facial recognition.
Because biology, much like structural engineering, operates on deeply complex, interconnected constraints. The AI is simply identifying patterns within those biological constraints far faster and with more subtlety than traditional human observation.
And we see that same biological mastery at 4A Bioscience, which is an MIT spinout. They are using their Pentagon AI platform to literally grow actual plant materials and fabricated seeds from single cells.
Yeah, their work with the soapbark tree is amazing.
It is. Right now, they are successfully growing wood from the soapbark tree. And this tree is critically important because its bark contains compounds essential for manufacturing human vaccines, but it's an endangered species in Chile. So 4A takes a single cell, uses AI to understand the exact nutritional and environmental constraints needed to trigger tissue growth, and grows the vital wood in a lab without ever having to plant or harvest a single tree.
The AI is basically deciphering the cellular instruction manual of the plant.
Yeah.
And the applications of this spatial and physical intelligence extend into incredibly hostile environments, too.
Right, like the deep ocean. Ivy Monkey, an intern at MIT Lincoln Lab, just successfully ran real-world field tests of algorithms that allow human divers and autonomous underwater robots to navigate collaboratively without any GPS.
Wow.
Yeah, they rely purely on localized acoustic data and AI spatial mapping to understand where they are relative to each other in the pitch black of the ocean. So we are using AI to grow wood without trees, navigate the abyss without satellites, and diagnose rare diseases just by analyzing someone's knuckles.
It's everywhere.
It really makes you wonder if we have been so completely distracted by talking chatbots that we've missed the fact that AI's most profound impact will actually be physical, not digital.
I think we have. Chatbots were simply the conversational interface that taught the general public how to interact with these systems. But text generation was never the end game. The true value of artificial intelligence lies in its ability to synthesize, optimize, and engineer the physical constraints of our reality.
Yet, even as AI masters logic, physics, and biology, it is now aggressively expanding into the most inherently human domain of all, culture and creative expression.
And this is causing some serious waves.
Oh, yeah. Looking at the sources from the entertainment industry, the legacy legal system is completely buckling under the pressure.
The collision between instantaneous generative culture and the traditional frameworks of copyright law was just inevitable.
Definitely.
But the sheer velocity of consumer adoption is rendering the old laws obsolete in real time.
Look at Google's massive rollout in February 2026, which they are calling Gemini drops. They dropped an absolute arsenal of creative and analytical tools.
This is a huge release.
You have Gemini 3.1 Pro and DeepThink, which can solve complex, modern scientific problems not just by guessing, but by providing verified, direct-link scientific citations and mapping out their reasoning pathways.
Very impressive.
But on the cultural side, you have Lyria 3, generating fully produced 30-second music tracks from a simple text prompt. You have Nano Banana 2 for high-speed images with multilingual text. You have VO templates for instantly remixing the stylistic elements of a video. But the real cultural earthquake in your stack of sources is happening over at the AI music platform Suno.
Although Suno is completely changing the game. They allow users to generate full radio-quality songs, complete with vocals and instrumentation, on demand.
Exactly. And they just surpassed 2 million paying subscribers, hitting $300 million in annual recurring revenue.
That is massive scale.
It really is. But the kicker is that this explosive financial growth is happening while Suno is buried under massive existential copyright lawsuits from Universal Music Group, Sony Music, and major European rights organizations like Coda and GEMA.
The whole industry is coming for them.
Yeah. The music industry's legal strategy right now is like trying to catch a waterfall with a bucket.
Or issue a speeding ticket to a teleporter.
Exactly. The law is built to govern the time, labor, and distribution channels humans use to create a song, but the AI is bypassing that entire journey. Suno's CEO claims they are shifting society away from passive consumption toward active creative entertainment. But honestly, at $300 million in revenue, hasn't a platform like Suno essentially become too big and too culturally entrenched to sue out of existence?
That is the exact friction point right there.
Yeah.
Copyright law was fundamentally built around the idea of protecting fixed, finished works created by human labor over a period of time.
Right. It assumes a scarcity of creation.
Exactly. But consumer demand has radically, permanently shifted. People now expect instant, personalized, frictionless creation. When a generative platform reaches $300 million in recurring revenue, it proves that the underlying consumer behavior has already changed.
The genie is out of the bottle.
It is. The legacy legal frameworks simply are not equipped to handle a machine that can ingest the entire history of recorded human music, understand the underlying patterns of melody and rhythm, and output a culturally relevant, novel song in 10 seconds.
Wow.
The lawsuits from Sony and Universal might eventually force some kind of retroactive licensing model or, a financial settlement, but they cannot unring the bell. Generative culture is the new baseline.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's pull all these threads together. Today, we've explored AI acting as a stateful digital twin managing your corporate calendar, a physical manufacturer optimizing the structural integrity of 3D objects, a controversial defense contractor navigating geopolitical red lines, and a cultural engine generating hit songs on demand.
It's been a massive shift.
It really has. But consider this final thought. Remember how we started about talking about the hammer? When you swing a hammer and break a window, the chain of causality is clear. You are liable. But if your stateful AI digital twin, like Ada, autonomously negotiates a contract or makes a scheduling promise that results in a massive financial loss for your company, who actually bears the legal liability?
That's a huge question.
Or if a physical object engineered by an AI system like MIT's Physiopt structurally fails in the real world and causes a severe accident, who gets sued? Is it you, the user who typed in the prompt? Is it the AI company that trained the model on those shape priors? Or, as these systems become increasingly stateful, proactive, and autonomous, does our legal framework have to somehow shift liability to the AI itself?
It is the ultimate unresolved question of the autonomous age. As we eagerly give these systems the agency to act, create, and engineer in the real world, our legal, moral, and economic frameworks are severely lagging behind the technology.
It's definitely something for you to mull over as these stateful systems take the wheel in our daily lives. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep paying attention, and keep questioning the algorithms that are quite literally shaping your world.
Before you go, please subscribe to the podcast Prime. And if you enjoyed today's episode, hit like to support us. Thanks for listening and see you next time.